in spirit, nutrition, your brother, your friend, your dietitian, back again for another installment. Books that changed my life, or should I say authors that changed my life. Dale Carnegie. Let's get it poppin'. So as a young maverick millennial, as a young go-getter, as a young employee, entrepreneur, business person, what have you, you're going to want to have tips, you're going to want to have game, you're going to want to have wisdom on how to navigate in this world, whether you're in Nigeria, Singapore, Japan. Culture is different, of course, but or Los Angeles or New York. Some things that I had to learn was how to deal with people in the workplace. So recently I took time to study Dale Carnegie. He's the master of human relations. Dale Carnegie he started off in New York giving speeches on how to publicly speak. He started giving courses on how to become a public speaker, but he's best known for his works, How to Win Friends and Influence People specifically, and how to stop worrying and start living. So what I did was I made a study of his books. So I have The Leader in You by Dale Carnegie and Associates, How to Enjoy Your Life and Your Job, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Okay, so the books are like super insightful. The books are super insightful. So the main thing is that growing up, I always used to argue with people a lot. It was a mixture of me just having teenage angst, and a mixture of me being like critical thinker, a debater, always trying to find out the truth in things. But it didn't turn out well by constantly arguing with people, constantly telling people they were wrong, pointing out flaws in people's arguments and logic and things like that. So I had to learn how to cut back on that, keep my opinion to myself, or express it in a way that wasn't as abrasive. And then in the workplace, I ran across troubles and problems, specifically in with my last employer. I actually had some issues with my last employer because he was probably not the most amicable person, I'll say, but he did have a lot of strengths. But I would focus on the parts that I didn't like, and we would kind of butt heads. And so with my last employer, it was not my employer, but my supervisor that worked for the employer, that we were both employed by the same company. But basically, I have a critical mind. I have a logical, reasoning mind, and I can think pretty quickly, but I see like flaws in reasoning, and I'll point them out. But it's never a good thing to point out somebody's flawed reasoning for reasons I'll discuss in the video. So there's a couple things I learned from Dale Carnegie. I haven't finished reading How to Win Friends or Influence People, and I haven't even finished reading How to Stop the Worry Habit, or How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. But I did read the other two books that I showed you, and they're made up of principles from those first two books. So I'm making my way through those books. But with Dale Carnegie, the first main thing that I really learned from his books is not to criticize, condemn, complain, argue, or tell people that they're wrong. With my last supervisor, we would have board meetings, and so it would be like a meeting in front of a bunch of other people, his superiors, my superiors, or sometimes the meeting would just be led by him. But he would say something that was incorrect, but what would I get out of telling him that he was wrong? What did I get out of it? Nothing. I never got anything out of proving that he was wrong, pointing out that he was wrong, or anything like that. So I would point out the fact that he was wrong in certain instances, and who the hell wants to hear that they're wrong in a board meeting in front of their superiors or in front of anyone? No one wants to hear that. So I will point it out thinking that it was something important when it isn't. Dale Carnegie says that if you're ever going to call attention to other people's mistakes, make sure you call attention to other people's mistakes indirectly. So as a millennial maverick, as a go-getter, you're trying to navigate in the world. You can't just get around with pure sheer will. You have to use skills like personal skills, interpersonal skills. You have to be amicable. You have to be amiable. You have to get along with people. You have to get people to like you. So you have to be able to influence people. So if you're going to call attention to someone's mistakes, do it indirectly. Let them discover it. Let the other person, he says as well, let the other person save face. Always let the other person save face, meaning let them kind of discover their own mistakes without you pointing it out or showing it to everyone. All right, that was something that I really had to learn. And then before you criticize other people, talk about your own mistakes before you criticize the other person. So before you go into criticizing what they did wrong, how they did it, talk about your own mistakes, because now that person is going to be less on the defensive because they feel like, all right, this person is looking at his own mistakes too, and they're going to open up and say, all right, the brother's criticizing himself or the sister's criticizing herself, so maybe I can criticize myself. So she in a conversation, if you're saying I did this wrong, I did that wrong, they'll say, yeah, I mean, don't be so hard on yourself. I did this wrong too. I make that mistake too, and you get along better with people. Let's see what else. Another thing is giving recognition, appreciation, and praise. Genuine recognition, appreciation, awards, and praise. So a lot of times now I'm moving into leadership positions and my gigs in the workplace and in my career because I've been in the game for a little while and I'm moving into leadership positions. Let's keep it as simple as that. But another reason why I'm doing studies with Dale Carnegie is that I want to improve my human relations so that once I'm moving up further in these leadership positions, I have good relationships with the people I'm managing, with the people that I'm dealing with and building with, whether it's my supervisor or someone that's subordinate, quote unquote, to me, just people on the team in general. So one of his principles he teaches is giving honest, sincere appreciation, recognition, praise, and rewards. So I hear people complain all the time, like our centers will make improvements in numbers, or they'll reach out to a client and they'll help them, and they always say, how come such and such didn't recognize us? How come such and such didn't reward us? The number one thing, or one of the number one things that human beings need, women, men, children, elderly, everyone who's living in a human being, they want to feel appreciated. Love is a form of appreciation. Care is a form of appreciation. People want to feel appreciated. So if somebody does something that is extraordinary or just does something well, show sincere appreciation and recognition, even if it's something slight, even if it's just a card, a public announcement, anything. People love that. So you want to make sure you give recognition and praise to people that you're in a relationship with on the same equal level, or if someone is subordinate to you, quote unquote subordinate to you, and you're working with them. All right. Never ever say you're wrong. Show respect for the other person's opinions. So there's the truth. Well, there's always three sides to an argument. It's your side, the other person's side, and the truth. That's what they say, right? So it does you no good to say, I'm about to prove you wrong on this point, that point, this point, and then you shove the truth in this person's face or shove the truth down this person's esophagus. Don't nobody have time for that. Nobody wants to talk to you if you pretentious, you coming up a young cat or old cat or any kind of cat, and you're trying to talk down on someone and tell them that they're wrong. That was what I used to do in the workplace because I felt like, I'm proving something wrong. I'm proving this guy wrong, and if I show that he's wrong, then he'll concede or he'll give in somehow. No. Another thing Dale Carnegie says is you can't win an argument. If you're in any type of argument with somebody, you're already losing. There's no reason for you to argue with anyone, and it's not beneficial to you or the other person. If you're having a discussion, if you're ironing things out, that's different. But arguing with someone to prove that they're wrong, at the end of the day, you guys both lose, because that person's pride is hurt. You're walking away with your shoulders up and you're feeling good, but really you lost, because now you have an enemy. You don't have a friend. You don't have somebody who feels comfortable around you. They feel like you attacked their pride, their dignity, and their manhood or womanhood. And that's another thing that Dale Carnegie talks about, is recognizing and respecting another person's dignity. Don't ever tell somebody that they're wrong in front of their face, behind their back, or in front of a large group of people. Another thing he says is get the other person saying yes immediately. Yes, immediately. So oftentimes we may disagree with somebody, and so we may think they're wrong, but in that instance, in the situation, their logic may not fully apply, but we're gonna let the other person save face. So we begin in a friendly manner. You always begin in a friendly way, and you start off the conversation where you all agree, where you both can agree on. Our objective is such and such. Our mutual goal is such and such. We may differ in methods, but not in principle, right? We may differ in means, but never in purpose. So you point out the commonalities, the mutual benefits, the mutual goals, the mutual objectives, and you get the other person saying yes and being in agreement, because that loosens the person up. That allows the person to say, okay, this person is on my side. We may differ a little bit in methodologies, but ultimately this person is saying the same thing as me, so they'll be more open to work with you, right? This is kind of like from the 48 Laws of Power, but I needed to learn this at my workplace, because I would come up with ideas in the workplace, but because I was so disagreeable with my supervisor, and it wasn't with everyone, I just didn't like the cat, but in general, it doesn't matter. You need to learn how to navigate. So what was I saying? I would come up with ideas in the workplace, but he would shoot the ideas down, only to later use the same ideas. And so I would be like, okay, he said the idea was a dumb idea, and then later on we're implementing the idea and it's successful. So one of the keys is let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. So you don't have to take the credit for the idea. What's your goal? Your goal is to see the implementation of the idea. You want to see the idea manifested. So it's not about who gets the credit. It's about letting the other person believe it's his or her idea. So don't shove something down their esophagus. Don't shove something down their throat. Give it to them light. Lead them to believe that they're the ones who came up with the idea. They're the ones who had the epiphany. They're the ones who came up with the revelation. So you kind of hint at the idea, bring the idea to the surface, and then let that person kind of jump on it. All right. I think another thing that I really, really learned is listening and seeing things from the other person's perspective, standing in the other person's shoes. So I always kind of just thought from my perspective, only thought from my logic or reasoning, what I thought was right and correct, how I thought things should go. But when you really step out, take a moment to step out and see things from the other person's perspective, and you actually listen, not listen to respond, not listen to object, not listen to come up with your own ideas, but listen to genuinely understand where this person is coming from and see things from their perspective. Because the best and most persuasive people are those who listen. If you understand where somebody comes from, they're going to be more open, trusting, and communicating with you. Speaking of communication, one of the key things is communication. No matter how busy your workday is, no matter how much work you have to do, always communicate with your team, with your staff, with your coworkers, and with your supervisor. You have to communicate, and this goes for entrepreneurs too, with your client, with anyone. You want to keep the door of communication open. The greatest ideas in the world are useless. They remain idle. They remain stifled and stagnant if they aren't properly communicated. So they need to be communicated to the world, to your team, to whatever is necessary to bring it to fruition. So keep the doors of communication open. If you're in a leadership position, Dale Carnegie talks about not condemning, criticizing people once they take the risk of communication or making suggestions. People always complain. They ask us for suggestions, but they never use our suggestions. Try as much as possible when you can to use the suggestions of your employees. And if you don't utilize them, thank them for the suggestion. Don't criticize them or make them feel some type of way about bringing up that actual idea. All right. And then dealing with like leadership again, it's one idea that I really like that Dale Carnegie mentioned is not giving orders, but instead asking questions. So, would you mind doing this? Could you please do this? How do you feel about having this done by Tuesday? So there's tips and ways of speaking to people that isn't condescending, isn't direct, isn't so directive and so abrasive. So it allows people to feel like they have the option to do it. They feel less pressured, and they feel open to you. So these are some of the tools and some of the things that I learned from Dale Carnegie, just studying his works. Like I said, I still have to go through How to Win Friends and Influence People entirely. I've been listening to the audiobook, so I know some of it. Like one of the key tips is calling someone by their first name. Somebody keeps hitting me up on my phone. Calling someone by their first name. So there's nothing more beautiful to someone's ear than hearing their name, the name that they were given at birth. So never forget names, and also call people by their name. All right, that's one other things that he says that really connects with people. But another one is becoming genuinely interested in another person. There's a story about Benjamin Carson, who was trying to get into Johns Hopkins medical school back in the day. He's a brain surgeon, famed brain surgeon, and in order to get into that school, he had to do interviews with the dean, I think, of the school or something like that. But the dean, I believe, was playing classical music, the story goes, and Benjamin Carson actually was in love with classical music, but he took the time to discuss the dean's interest in classical music, and they ended up talking for hours, or hour and a half, 2 hours, about classical music, the dean's interest and their mutual interest in classical music. And out of the 5, 10, 15 people, how many people were interviewed, he was one of the only ones that were accepted. I think it was only like 3 students that were accepted. He was one of them. They all pretty much qualified, but it was because Benjamin Carson showed a genuine interest in that other person, that dean, that he got in. So when you develop a new relationship with the client, with the coworker, with the staff member, with the supervisor, become genuinely interested in that other person. Learn about that person. Take notes on that person's belief systems, on their attitudes, behaviors, etc. And it could push you and take you a long way. All right. One other one that I really like, the last one. There's so many. I don't know if I should just keep going or what. But another jewel that Dale Carnegie dropped is where is it? Enthusiastic. Remember that no one ever kicks a dead dog. So being a young, more coming up, working in the professional world, sometimes I'll come across people who are either as educated as me, more educated, less educated, that feel threatened by me, I suppose, or they just don't like me. So I've had like false criticisms and people that have lied on me and things like that coming up in my career. I always thought, like, man, what's the beef? Like, why are people coming at me? But you have to remember that no one ever kicks a dead dog. So anytime someone is criticizing you, a lot of times it's because you're doing something extraordinary. You're doing something that other people aren't doing. So it's something to remember when you're out in the world and you feel like you're getting unjust criticism. Just smile and know that it means that I'm doing something that other people aren't doing. I'm standing out from the crowd. And just let the water roll off your shoulders. Don't trip. Don't worry about it. These are the tips that I've learned. There's a lot more because it's like 4 books that I have here. But I would say take the time to study Dale Carnegie's principles. Write it down in a journal so that you can have a reference place to see everything that you've been studying and get the highlights. And then go out there and achieve. Change the game. Change the world in your field. Your brother, your friend, your dietitian back again for another installment in spirit, nutrition, 16 videos challenge celebrating 1,600 subscribers. 1,600 subscribers. I want to do 16 videos. It's the 16 video challenge. Shout out to Philip Young, the brothers. I believe he's from Cambodia. Please forgive me if I'm incorrect, but he's been showing a lot of support and shouting me out, and it's really making me feel amazing and great. Thank you for other people who are shouting me out and watching my videos. If you want, you can share. Like I said, I never ask people to really share or subscribe, but if you think the information is valuable, share it with your family, with your friends. It's just me sharing my experience with the world. So peace and blessings, good health, and mad wealth. Bless up.